Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show to View with Mike G, the show of life, the show of 91.7 KOOP Radio here in Austin, Texas, wine, podcasting, and so much more. It's my pleasure to share with you a little different flavor of the show this week. I had the pleasure of standing up in the 91.7 KOOP Radio Austin, Texas station with Mr. Mark Rashap, host of Another Bottle Down. As I covered the spirits industry and all of those brilliant personalities, Mark does the same thing in wine. I haven't tapped into the wine personalities too much, so Mark and I combined, it is quite the force. So we interview each other. We talk about podcasting. We talk about wine, spirits, personalities, and modern politics. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy this great chat with Mark Rashap of Another Bottle Down.
All right, we are back. This is Another Bottle Down, and we talk about wine and the wine industry. My name is Mark Rashap, and of course, it's KOOP Radio. Get all the info at koop.org. It's really a great pleasure to welcome my next guest into the KOOP studios. We are live, and Mike G has been doing this podcast on the spirits industry for a number of years. He's up to 225 episodes. It's called The Show to V, which is a really clever pun.
Or cheeky. Yeah, I'm kind of a punk in that way.
Yeah. Right.
Dumb jokes, man. Dad jokes all the time.
Yeah. So, you have taken on the podcast format. How does it feel to be live in the studio?
I like it, because I'm relatively lazy in some aspects of editing.
Right.
I don't edit the episodes.
Right.
So if they're bad, it's my fault. So it's, in a sense, I always kind of treat it as it's live. Now, of course, we probably sip a bit more bourbon and swear just a little bit more, which I know is completely verboten here in this FCC riddled place.
Right, absolutely. And but it is a fun thing. I've had some guests where I've had to do a little bit more editing if I've pre-recorded them. Yeah. And there's just something about the passion. Sometimes things slip out.
Sure.
And that's why we have a dump button here in the studio. But
10 seconds though, right? This is cool. I'm learning about this stuff. This is, I don't even have many tools in that respect to my disposal.
Right. So one of the first things that I want to talk about, because the reason I think that you're doing really cool things with your podcast is you're using spirits as a conduit to get to know people. Sure. And to also get to talk about pop culture, music, all kinds of arts.
Yeah.
And was that always the intention? Was the intention always to use spirits first to kind of get to know other people and get to just talk about other things?
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of people, there's so many product-centric podcasts, commercials and things, but I love people. We love people. And in some sense, what this has become is a way to kind of emulate how it is to sit at the bar with these guys. Right. So, I however many rounds, but just to sit there and just tap into their brain a bit, but both ways. And so I'm going to share dumb jokes and they're going to share dumb, and this common experience of just living and being creative and tripping and getting back up,
Right. And that, I bet, we're going to talk about your method a little bit, but I love that idea of being in a bar with somebody, getting to know them, and that can lead you in many directions.
Sure. You inevitably talk about love. You inevitably talk about creativity, whether that's music or acting. But the thing that is actually very important to note is that I don't ever want it to seem like I'm making some excuse to just sit down and drink with people, right? It's not that. It is just simply a conduit, and it is what really I consider emotional equity.
Yeah.
I'll say something personal because I think that's what it takes to get someone to say something personal back. It is that reflective nature of communication.
Yeah, there is something about that way that you can make a guest feel comfortable. Yeah. I hope I'm doing that right now.
Sure. Yeah, that's great.
Make a guest feel comfortable, and then you can open up. And some of the great podcasters, can do that, and they have a gift at that. Do you think that that is something that might be particular to the modality of podcasting? That I know some people get nervous in the studio here, and then when I pre-record for this podcast, and it's podcasted after,
Right.
then people are a little bit more comfortable. Do you feel like that gives you a certain edge?
Yeah, it's interesting. Everybody can talk and have conversation, but what they choose to feel comfortable talking about or bringing up even, kind of pushing the boundaries sometimes is a very healthy thing. And especially when you're dealing with people that are so ensconced in brands, right? And I love brands. There's some amazing brands. But pierce that veil of the brand, and then what is that guy really thinking? What does that woman feel like in this industry? That's really what's interesting in this common experience again, right?
Absolutely.
Kind of making sure you can dig into that.
Yeah. How do you pick your guests?
Well, availability.
Yeah, right.
I have a short list. There are actually some folks that Dale DeGraw, for instance, Dale the Whale, as I call him, the white whale, because I haven't been able to secure an interview just yet, but he's been on the list for a long time. But there are people that just inevitably come into town.
Yeah.
Graciela Angeles of Real Minero. And she was in town randomly, never comes into Austin, really. So you just make sure you pay attention and people come in.
Right, absolutely. Do you see any trends in terms of, you cover all spirits?
Sure.
And are there certain personalities that gravitate to mezcal, or certain personalities that gravitate to gin or to vodka, that sort of thing?
That's a great question. How about this? I wish more personalities flocked to brandy, perhaps, which is akin to wine, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's, in terms of the narrative right now, the fun and maybe riveting thing to talk about because of how it is potentially threatened, that the natural resource itself is agave, right? So mezcales are very popular. Lots of people finding passion because it's passion as a conduit through that bottle, right? But sotol, another thing, that's coming up too.
So you feel that there's an extreme nature to mezcal, and that brings out this passion in people.
Sure. I talk about, you talk about pop culture, I talk about music all the time. Mezcal to me are still those three kids playing in the garage. It's that unbridled fury, that unbridled creativity, the connection to their passion, right? That's what mezcal is still. And that's maybe why so many people are protective about it, because what if you bring in that big name producer and you start changing the natural inherent ruggedness and kind of primal nature?
Right, as if mezcal kind of went into the tequila realm that's like big brands or something like that.
Which is completely fine, however, but you got to protect some stuff. This got to still kind of be cool. It's supposed to be protected and natural and natural. And that, I think, is what we're really striving for as well, just as a community.
Yeah, I mean, I think I see that too in the wine world, and it's something that I really pay attention to, with so much noise out there, you want to talk with people who have this sense of purity,
right,
who want to maintain something. And often it's really about idealism, and it can be a tough thing.
Right. You know what the best part is, actually? So you take, there's certain palencas that you go to. Acalino is one that comes to mind. And for those who, Mezcal Bago is a particular brand. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about brands, but yeah, great mezcal, right? And he doesn't know the impact. He's just doing his thing.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's the most romantic sentiment of it all.
Right.
Is that he just is doing what he knows how to do.
Yeah.
There's nothing else.
And did you have a particular spirit that you were into that brought you in there? Were there any surprises along the way? For me, I remember the first time and I'm not a spirits guy, but I remember the first time that I tasted calvados.
Oh my gosh.
And calvados just blew my mind, which is the distillate of
apple
cider.
Brandy, right, absolutely.
Right, just like brandy is the distillate of grapes. And there's just this perfume of an orchard, and
it's love. I mean, I had the pleasure just a year ago, almost today, being in Normandy and sipping Calvados at the Domaine du Pont, and it was a brilliant going through their. And I mean, this is kind of boasting a tad, but going through their cellar and sipping out of their barrels. Here's a tip. Here's a great tip about Calvados. Not only is it delicious, and if you ever go to a liquor store in Normandy or Caen, you actually get to sample whatever Calvados you want for free.
Wow.
So it's an amazing thing. Because well, what about that one from 1955? Right. and I'm laughing.
It's not going to go bad. And it's not like a bottle of wine where you open it and you only have a day.
Yeah. But back to the original question, my life in terms of has been punctuated by spirits in a lot of different ways, and has really been by category. There's a rich culture in brandy, cognac, armagnac, Calvados. There's a rich culture in agave, sotol, which is not agave, but in that same family, mezcal. Lechuguilla, there's a lot of these different things, but then you got bourbon, and then you got scotch, and you have gin. And so it is an interesting journey punctuated by the categories. If you're just like, all right, well, the next quarter of my life is going to be dedicated to this particular
So you
category.
have these dedicated stages where you're like...
It just finds me, yeah.
Yeah, and then you geek out about that.
Totally,
and,
yeah.
Wow.
Did you ever collect baseball cards or anything?
I did collect baseball cards as a kid.
Do you remember Upper Deck came out with their first series in 1989, Ken Griffey Jr.'s #1 card? Great thing. But you get 10 of those cards. You're like, well, actually, now I want all the cards.
Right.
I want the complete set.
Right.
So this is how it becomes, regrettably, to my wallet about certain categories. Because you're like, well, yeah, but now I don't have a scotch I don't have enough Space Side scotch now. So I need some more Campbellton stuff, So I'm a collector, and that's a problem, I think.
Is there any spirit that you kind of can't wrap your head around? Like for me, I just have a hard time. And again, I'm not a spirits guy, but I love the passion with which you tackle it. But for me, I just can't really understand vodka. I mean, it seems like so straightforward. And
well, it's the absence of flavor.
Right.
I use this when I talk about spirits. If you go to a restaurant and there's 10 items, all of which sound insanely appealing, but one says, well, it's just kind of a water with some ice and there's a napkin underneath. It's pretty flavorless and odorless. What would compel you to drink that? Right. Now, is it a good conduit for flavors? Yes, but I think it's more of a means to an end in that case. Of course, people say maybe there's some nuances depending on grain and stuff, but ultimately, really neutral. That's what it has to be legally, right?
And that's what it has to be. Do you have any categories where you're like, I can kind of get the appeal, but it doesn't inspire me? I know you're probably in a political situation here.
Well, that's an interesting one. It's not about brands. Every brand makes great stuff and stuff that I don't find it really incredible. But there's just some basic guidelines, right? If you add flavoring to it to make it taste artificial, not into that. I know that you guys experience that with some wines in some sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
Coloring is another thing.
Right.
If the proof is too low, I'm a stickler. I can't drink an 80 proof scotch. It's got to be 90 or above for me.
Because that's a purist sort of thing, too, right?
I just like the flavor. And if you think about it, I'm not paying for 60% water. I want more. There's booze in my bottle, Right. But I don't know. And then I feel like that's kind of being slightly pretentious. But you know what? You sip enough stuff. You know what wines you like now, right?
Sure. And I'm proven incorrect every once in a while too. Yeah. And that is the best part that is the best part of being in the wine industry, where you're like, this category of wine, it just doesn't call to me. And then you try one example and you have this epiphany. And that happened to me very recently with Coonawarra Cab. This is an Australian Cabernet Sauvignon. The region is Coonawarra, and it has this really pronounced eucalyptus flavor.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And I was always, it just didn't call to me, and it kind of was somewhat off-putting. And then I had this epiphany where it was a wonderful bottle, and now I find it alluring and attractive.
Absolutely.
And I love that, where I've been thinking about that wine for actually days.
Do you remember when? So I use this analogy, I've used it a couple times lately, but I remember buying My Bloody Valentine Loveless. Okay, incredible wall of sound record, massive guitars, everything. I bought that record 3 times because I returned it and got as a UCD 3 times back in the 90s, right? And then it takes some time, and you eventually I can drink Lafroig. Right. The peat isn't so off-putting,
right?
We grow up, but you can't ever change if you refuse to accept new things. And then maybe that's the true sentiment, is that you have to be open.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk about flavor. If you are just tuning in, we are talking with Mike G from the Show to V podcast. He covers spirits with guests who are passing through Austin, or maybe he's traveling to visit them at various conferences. And you can find more information at showtov.libsyn.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Yeah. It is
proud to announce showtov.com too.
Showtov.com.
Totally live, and now I'm writing content, good for better or for worse.
Oh, awesome. Oh, okay. So I didn't see that, but showtov.com.
Yeah, easy enough.
Yeah. And so we're doing this dual thing here because Mike G does interview for his podcast. So we're going to flip the reins, but I have a few more minutes.
Yeah. Yes. So here's the good thing. You have line of sight to the time.
Right.
I don't, because I would never pull my phone out on this, right? So you have to tell me when we get to flip.
Right.
So then I'm on the hook.
Well, we'll play some of your music that you've picked out from the Co-op library.
A beautiful library it is.
Yeah. What we've had this discussion just about perceiving spirits, and that's something that you think a lot about, and you talk to your guests about, because it's so personal. And when you're interviewing somebody and you get the personal feeling from them, the way that they describe how they perceive can be an incredibly interesting thing.
Yeah, it in a way, we experience lives in different ways. So maybe when you travel and you're in someplace new you've never been before, what's the way that you navigate that city? Is it by foot? Is it by train? Is it from pub to pub? And in a way, that's kind of the thing, the narrative that people kind of craft with those spirits. Actors, they think potentially, what does a scene look like? What does it sound like? What's the lighting like? As a musician or a music guy, I'm always thinking, well, is it a major or minor triad? As you're talking, a chat with Ezra Starr recently that is released, that she thinks about it like that,
right?
And daiquiri's perfect, 3 notes, right? And you shift the rum, make it darker, perhaps then it's a minor third. But you use an agricole, brighter, punchier, maybe more major third. So it is cool that we all have these different places that we come from to kind of think about. Because for you, when you close your eyes, do you see a picture? Do you see smells? Do you see a place? What exactly is it that?
So actually, I have done some research with cognitive behavioralists, and actually, we do all see flavor.
I like that.
And what's the craziest thing, and I want you to try this with spirits. I'm not sure it will work, but it works with wine, and it will blow your mind. Is that when you swirl and you sniff a wine, you'll smell all these things. If you move your eyes upward to look as high above your head as you can, which you can't look above your head, but if you basically take your eyes and leave your line of sight, you cannot smell. Period.
Ooh, I'd hate that.
I know, right?
No, that's an interesting
exercise. But if you look way far up, you will smell the glass normally, look up and smell again, and it just shocks everybody. You will not be able to smell that wine.
Wow.
Because the way that our brain works is that our eyes actually settle on different parts of our line of sight depending on what we're smelling.
Yeah. As weird as that sounds, I've always noticed that I look forward when I drink.
Okay.
Or when I'm kind of thinking, now I make stupid faces inevitably, right? And everybody's like, do you like it or not? I'm like, no, just hold on, I'm thinking. But yes, I'm almost always looking straight. I don't veer. It's just stoic kind of look.
If you have a nostalgic sort of thought, think about something nostalgic right now.
Got it.
You just went to the upper left.
Yeah.
Your eyes just moved to the upper left.
Oh, that's great.
And that is where nostalgia will be.
The upper left is, okay.
If you're analytical, it will go to the right-hand side of your line of sight.
No, I never go right. I just realized this.
Well,
this
it's a true artist.
thing. Yeah, well, thank you very much. Yeah. No, finally, I've been calling myself an artist for years, and I get some validation. I think this is all we've been seeking for decades now. But no, I never look right. It's so strange. I just thought about that. It's always left.
Yeah,
like I'm distracted or something.
Well, so I mean, at least that's the nostalgia sort of part, or the creativity sort of side of things, and that happens with. Like if I'm saying to somebody, oh, you think about cherries and strawberries, as opposed to if you think about your grandma's potpourri, the eyes will go in different places.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah. Something pleasurable and something that potentially is quite off-putting.
Right.
Like mothballs and baby oil and baby. Those smells particularly really bother me.
So you like to not necessarily try and hammer down these definable things. Do you like more of the poetic descriptions? Does that call to you more?
Oh, I like them both. Okay. I really, appropriate or not, love analogies to describe scenarios, as I've talked with returning a UCD, or just with flavors themselves. I wouldn't say that I really look at it too structured. Because I think once you lose the art of a spirit, something that is just a natural eau de vie, perhaps like a calvados do, that's not trying to be manufactured into something that's insanely complete and the same every year, right? So I don't know. It's weird. I don't think about it so structured. It's more like, how do I feel? How does it make me feel? Yeah, I'm one of those empaths. I hear. Hence why we're both here, probably trying to get a little bit of emotion out of each other.
Well, it is really it's really difficult the task that we have, because folks are probably not drinking the wine out there or drinking the spirit that we are sitting down and talking about. you are a lot luckier because you get to taste while you do your podcast.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And I can't have liquids in the studio, which is a good thing because we want this equipment and we want Co-op to stay healthy.
Yeah.
But I often taste before the show or whatnot.
You've got to do a little bit because it's connective.
But that whole process of of sitting down with somebody and running through it. Do you have a standard way that you kind of taste and run through things in your head?
Yeah, every I think memorable or successful movie is ultimately a 3-act play, right? There's the start, there's the climax, and then there's the denouement. I think is what they call it, that third chapter. So if there are more than for instance, if they potentially bring, which I love it. And after we get out of the conversation, maybe try some more stuff. I really prefer 3 marks at the most.
Okay.
Because then you go beginning. I changed the narrative a little bit, but it's still 3 chapters. Where'd you start? How did you get to kind of where you are in this industry? And now this particular phase, what's next for you? And so each of the SKUs, if you will, the marks, they represent a punctuation and a new chapter in that narrative of this person.
And does that then represent the conversation that you have?
Yeah, I try to start with youngest to oldest, which is maybe too literal, but that's often how it goes. And you start out with the Blanco, for instance, right, with the tequila or a Joven for Mezcal. And then you go to the stuff that's older and then becomes richer, more nuanced, potentially more soulful and educated, much like we do as we get older.
Right. I love that. I mean, we although I still have a long ways to go.
We both do.
To full development. If you're just tuning in, my name is Mark Rashap. This is Another Bottle Down. We talk about wine and the wine industry every week, but then we dabble in spirits, we dabble in beer, and try to use those as a way to further appreciate life. And definitely talking here with Mike G from the Show to V podcast, and he's doing the same thing on the spirit side, trying to use spirits as a conduit to get to know his guests and get to discuss larger themes in the world. Actually, the politics of things these days does come up in your podcast.
It has to. I think wherever you side with it, and I think it's clear with the podcast conversations where my guests side with it, there is no denying that, one, comically, it's a great time to drink and a necessary time to drink. But secondly, there's something wrong with the way we're treating each other. Yeah. And I find that the hospitality community, wherever you go in the world, is united. And we have our problems, absolutely, but it at least is conducive and kind of represents maybe this interconnection that we do still have a community, despite what it might feel like on our phone when we're arguing with each other and arguing with people we never met about things we don't truly understand.
So because there is so much of this tension around, you see the hospitality industry, our bartenders, mixologists, and all that kind of those roles in society, you see them maybe trying to make more of an effort to connect with people?
I don't even think they have to. Business is booming because people need a safe haven. Right. Because if you think about it, in some sense, being a bartender is somewhat thankless in that you're just there to listen.
Yeah.
And you're going to have plenty of patrons that want to just unload. So in a way, it's cheap therapy, one shot at a time.
Right. And I love that concept of your discussions being that little being a fly on the wall of a bar conversation. Hey, Mike, we need to take a short break.
Sure.
You are a music guy. You're a sound guy. So you've picked out actually some music for us to just catch a breath to.
Absolutely. You got a beautiful collection of records back there. I was like, well, should I play Descendants? This is a little bit too furious for 1:00 in the afternoon. Should we go Gang of Four? But then I'm being too pretentious. So I'm going to go totally unknown, Esoteric Girls versus Boys. GVSB saw them open up for Rage Against the Machine in 1995. I think this record is about 1995. This is the first track on their major label debut, Park Avenue.
All right, let's hear it. You're listening to Co-op Radio, KOOP 91.7 FM and KOOP.org, talking with Mike G from the Show to V podcast. And we're back live in the studio of Co-op Radio, KOOP 91.7 FM and KOOP.org, speaking live with Mike G from the Show to V podcast. He has 225 episodes where he discusses spirits with professionals and really interesting folks in our beverage world. And we're going to do something a little bit unique here and flip the tables. And he's gonna basically take the lead on this interview for the last 22 minutes in the show.
As the few opportunities I've had to be interviewed, I always say that the hunter becomes the hunted.
Yeah, right.
And so we're flipping this.
I did hear one of those. I would at the 200 episode mark. You flipped the.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit. It's like at some point you're like, man, kind of done listening, but that's okay, and that's how this stuff goes. So it's a pleasure to be here, 91.7 KOOP. Get to do this radio voice thing. I love this. You get to use the inflection stuff. And so I've been looking through the interviews. I've been looking through what is this honorary award you received this year. So let's go back and rather think of just reflect, right? So you've had this illustrious career so far. You got an award from the Austin Food and Wine Alliance this year, an honorary mention. Do you feel like the community has embraced the show?
I think that the community has really embraced the show. Co-op has been extremely welcoming, and it's such an honor to be part of this station because not only do I have a show, but we volunteer. I also listen to Co-op pretty much nonstop. Cool. So all of the music programming, I'm a fan of. All of what we call the MPAs, the news and public affairs shows. I just think that they're top notch. I mean, we have theater, we have film, we have environmental issues. I just learn something, and it's a deep dive. These shows are an hour, 30 minutes, and it's not like you're getting a little 2-minute spot. You're getting a deep dive, and that's one of the most rewarding things. That when I hear an interview with somebody on Wine and More, bigger radio stations, it's like, oh, I want to hear more, and so we really get to delve in. And so I've been completely honored to be part of the show. I think the most rewarding piece to it is when I see a winemaker or somebody that's in the studio and they're able to tell their story, and I've gotten this from other programmers here. But the feeling that is to see this, like, you have a bigger voice sort of deal for something that you're passionate about, like that's why we do this.
It is. It's rewarding in a lot of different ways. It's something, the concept of a conversation, we kind of touched on it briefly. We were talking about maybe Twitter or just kind of engaging in these really perfunctory kind of short-term ways of communication.
Yeah.
You're experiencing people in a conversation.
Yeah.
Do you feel that the art of conversation, diving into these topics, as you say, you really enjoy doing, that's something that's really missing from people's lives?
Well, a lot of the winemakers that I interview, they're stuck in a winery. They're talking to their barrels and whatnot. And so sometimes it is a little awkward to get them out. But once that little awkward phase goes away, then I think that there's some really rewarding stuff that comes out. I do think that we are lacking a little bit of analysis and full coverage of topics overall in the society.
Absolutely.
I actually spent some time in the Netherlands and about a year and a half working there at a brewery, actually. And
thankless life you've got, Mark.
and they would maybe discuss things too much. And I actually I would on the weekends when I would watch some television, it would be the most boring news programs because it would be like one topic in society from 9 a.m. to noon. It's like 3 hours of discussion, and they're trying to be so political in terms of having like every single view represented on the show, which is what we try and do here, but they would have just hours and hours and hours of
ad nauseum.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's an interesting, I never thought about that being a risk.
So I hate soundbite, the soundbite quality of, a lot of our media is hard for me to tackle.
Sure, because it makes you and I seem really intelligent. You talk to us, we're a couple of doofuses, I imagine, right?
I'm okay with that side of it.
I'm all right, too. Yeah, I should have worn my glasses today, but it is radio. So no one even knows if we're wearing pants, which is a great thing. Don't think it's required from the FCC. But I digress. So this concept, did you find... Because your academic career is an interesting one, right? So some interest in math, some interest in Spanish as well, which, given that we're going to have to drink more mezcal together since you can speak Spanish probably quite well at this point.
Yeah, it's tested sometimes during membership drive. I have to come on Hilke's show and speak Spanish, and it's rusty.
It's rusty, but that's still better than...
Yeah.
What's before rusty? What's worse than rusty? Corroded? Is it?
It takes me, I was in Spain last year, and, it took me a couple of days to get in the swing of things, but then I was rocking and rolling.
That's great.
And it's really nice to talk with, I've got a lot of the winemaking world that I can communicate with. I can do okay French and Italian, just like winemaker speak.
Sure.
So I can get by with that, but in Spain, and then of course South America, Chile, and Argentina, which are major wine producing areas, I can really get in there.
That's great.
Yeah.
You and I potentially have one similar trait, and that is that people will open up to us. Did you notice this early on, but just latent understanding that realize maybe, Mark, you have this ability to get people to open up. Maybe they feel comfortable about you. Was that something maybe socially kind of understood when you're younger?
Yeah, I basically, I forget how it's worded, but I assume all of the stress in the room, sometimes to my detriment, actually, but it makes that I'm a really great arbiter of anything. I mean, just being in a group, I can basically, any tense situation, I can diffuse pretty well and pretty
diplomatically.
Quickly. Yeah.
You have a very calm demeanor. That helps, right?
Sometimes I'm a little bit too diplomatic, and that's something that I do. I'm consciously sometimes working on in terms of when do I want to actually go for it, and not be diplomatic.
Picking your battles kind of thing?
Yeah. And also if you're too diplomatic, it's also not that interesting. Right?
Yeah.
So sometimes controversy does do a little.
Friction encourages growth.
Friction encourages
right?
growth.
You're married. You understand that.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting thing. You're a good arbiter. I think that's a great place and great communication style to kind of get people to talk and get things moving. But for you, you've picked a topic. Whether the topic found you or you explored wine and then found out that you wanted to do research via the personalities and producers. But for you, let's say early on, what was your relationship and your family's relationship with alcohol?
Oh, none
whatsoever.
It was absolutely the travel piece of things that. No, my family, there was just no alcohol in the house, no wine,
Really?
No wine in the house.
Just not pay it no mind, or it was just intentional, or
No, just a
thing.
No, I mean, my parents were pretty busy, and it just was never anything that there was a little Manischewitz here and there, but at religious events, but my dad just never really enjoyed the taste of wine. He always thought it was too bitter, which is a common thing. And so it's really funny, even now in today's world, he'll make fun of me because he likes the really sweet wines. Yeah. And we constantly butt heads on that. But the first time that I was just blown away was when I went to Spain, and I was sitting around these tables as an exchange student, and with people of all ages. And these lunches or dinners would carry on. And I saw that wine was a facilitator in terms of it could bring people together.
Yeah.
It could link you with history. I like reading history and culture and travel and food. And so all of these things, it was pretty funny. I actually wasn't into food at all until I was 18 and went to Spain. I was a very picky eater. And basically, I arrived in Spain, and travel had opened me up. And then there was this little fish that you eat, the bones and all, like the head and the bones. And I would have never done anything like that. But because I was traveling and really interested in experiencing things, I was like, hey, why not? Ate it. And then from there on in, I ate and loved everything.
The man who ate everything.
Yeah.
That's a great thing. I think the culture does that. So, when people... It's not a way to judge by any means, but it is a sense. If you've traveled a lot, odds are you've probably eaten a lot of stuff.
Right.
Probably drank a lot of stuff. Exposure.
Yeah.
So then coming back from Spain, did you have this wanderlust to travel and to drink and to eat more and more?
Yeah, I left my pre-med degree behind and went to Spanish, and then I started studying the literature, because to me, the wine and literature are quite linked. And when I was first enjoying wine in Spain, I was reading poetry of Jose Marti, and it was just like, I just really geeked out about how I can smell a wine for over the course of an entire poem and still not be bored with it. Wow. I mean, this was, it was not the best wine at the time, but it was still, I was traveling to the region. So, there was some good stuff.
Yeah.
And I still feel that way. I feel that wine and the art of tasting wine for me is a form of meditation, actually.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because it's interesting. But everybody brings out another character after 4 glasses of wine, let's say.
Sure, right.
For you, do you still find that you're the diplomatic, easygoing guy that maybe becomes a tad more gregarious?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's certainly like some inhibitions that are left behind for sure.
On the tracks behind us.
Yeah, way far behind.
But isn't that one of the nice elements to being in this business, is that the thing you deeply appreciate and are passionate about, that is made by real people from real places and tradition, also makes you feel pretty good.
Right. Well, that wine wouldn't be something that we're talking about all the complexities about if it didn't do that throughout the millennia.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if it didn't make people enjoy some particular piece of life a little bit better, we would have been doing something else.
That's a good point.
Probably would have been smoking pot or something like that.
Something else enjoyable.
Yeah.
But it's got its own culture, and I think it's a beautiful way to punctuate your life, because you have so many different places with wine you can go.
Yeah.
Literally, right? Spain, Australia,
Oh, all over.
All over the place.
But I do really gain a tremendous amount of enjoyment from, basically taking a moment and shutting everything out and just sticking my nose in the glass of wine and just really forgetting everything.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, I love that about you can do. I mean, put it on the list. Calvados is amazing. Armagnac, these things, just a deep, rich flavor and smells, and just takes you someplace. And,
hey, you have to back announce on radio, and this is a.
That's right.
So yeah, it's a different. If you're just tuning in,
if you're just tuning in, I'm chatting with Mark H of Another Bottle Down. This is 91.7 FM Co-op Radio, Austin, Texas. The hunter becoming the hunted,
right,
as I call it.
And Mike G is the host and creator of the Show to V podcast.
I make a terrible point guard. I can't get the ball to anybody else, man. I'm Kobeing this whole thing. It's terrible. So as you kind of dove into this podcast piece, this live radio interview, have you had any interviews that were really, really difficult to get through? That potentially it was just a terrible match of personalities.
I was going to ask you that same question. We just didn't get to it. Yeah. There's always going to be some interviews that you don't really connect with the guest.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I see that when people are, maybe it's not their first passion. Maybe they're just working in the industry, or and so I think it happens less the better I get at selecting the guests.
Right.
Or I might schedule in a shorter time frame if I feel like there's not going to be a rapport or something like that.
But you diplomatically can navigate those waters pretty well.
Well, I mean, nobody walks in the studio here until 2 p.m., so something has to happen.
That's true. It's a good point. Fill the space.
Yeah, whereas you could just shut off the podcast.
I've done it.
Yeah, have you?
Yeah, it was tough. I felt like very, very anxious when I did it, but sometimes you got to call it. A bad conversation is a bad conversation.
Wow.
Yeah. Your eyes are lit up. I love it. Yeah.
I have screwed up some recording pretty bad.
Have you?
Yeah, with some real prominent guests. I was doing
the worst.
One in particular, and I just had my levels way off, and it wasn't clipping through the mics, but it was recording completely clipped.
Oh man!
And I know you're a sound guy, so
I've spent hours trying. If I get that kind of problem, it's just heartbreaking.
Well, I've done some research. I might need to pick your brain as far as I don't think I can clean it up. It's past recovery.
Always some options. We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah.
We're gonna play another song. Is this what we're doing? Or we can keep talking. Either way, it's good.
No, let's. We've got
some good time left.
All right.
We wanted to talk about the medium of podcast, and again, touching into conversation. Podcast is something that allows us to deep dive into a topic. How do you feel about the medium, and potentially how it will grow even larger as people become disconnected from mainstream media?
Yeah, I think that this is a great question and a great point and a great topic for our society right now. I think that podcasting is so cool that you can have, and there's so many things about it. You have that it could be just somebody with a mic who has something really interesting to say. It can be very alternative in a certain way. And then the form can actually be very interesting because most people listen to podcasts with earbuds.
Yeah.
And so you actually develop this closer relationship with the host, whereas most people
I had not thought that's brilliant.
Yeah, most people listen to radio in their car or at home or in the office or whatever, but most people listen to podcasts in earbuds, and you form a different relationship. Likewise, sometimes I enjoy different sounds of the voice because you can kind of get those a little bit more. Whereas, and I'm still working on the eliminating the ums and all this kind of stuff. Sorry,
it's tough,
out there if that bothers. But it's really tough. But in the podcasting world, you can hear maybe a little bit more of the natural imperfections in the voice, and then they become desirable to a certain extent.
No, that's why people listen to Tom Waits.
Yeah.
There's no other reason, right?
Yeah, I know.
Or the opposite, why they listen to Jeff Buckley, right? The beauty along with the coarseness. So I've got two questions. I love it because I can wrap it up just like my show, right? There's a little bit of control switched around. It's great. So I got two questions left for you.
Okay.
I asked this of all the guests, and you'd be surprised at the vast gamut of answers that I got. But let's say that you are sipping a glass of calvados.
Okay.
Anywhere in the world, doesn't matter where. It's your favorite place, whether it's on a park bench or in a pub, doesn't matter. Who would you love to sip and have a conversation with, living or deceased?
Oh, wow. I mean, living or deceased, one, and I get one.
I know.
Man, yeah, really hard. Wow, Calvados in the setting of my choice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say, and it could be, I'm going to do one personal.
Please.
It would probably be my mom because she passed away when I was young.
Yeah. It's a great way to connect.
World of, and it's just so much has happened since then.
Yeah.
And boy, I mean, she probably wouldn't drink Calvados, but maybe she would drink a whiskey sour. Was when she went to weddings, she would do that.
East meets West.
Yeah, I mean, and then so much has happened. And I would if I get a second one, just
of course you did. Mark, you get whatever you want. It's on the house.
Man, I would love to sit down with Barack Obama.
Oh man,
and that's maybe cliche. It's maybe too obvious.
But I think I heard he's a bourbon guy. Now, I know he drinks beer and stuff, which is great, but I heard he's got a penchant for bourbon.
Well, you should reach out. Maybe I'll be on your show.
Well, he already hit David Letterman, so I don't know.
I know, right?
Did you catch that?
And Mark Maron, too, in the podcast world.
Yeah, now I'd love to interview Mark Maron. That's definitely on the radar.
Yeah.
Well, so the kind of path for a lot of folks in this industry, on the wine side, on the spirit side, they do some brand ambassador work, they do some content work. You're creating this amazing program. But also, a lot of them write.
Yeah.
Is there, looking into the future state, a book on the horizon for you?
Ooh, that's good. I mean, I write for several blogs and a few, sometimes under my own name and sometimes not.
Yeah.
I would love to explore a book. And one of the things that I think would be really interesting to explore is more on the poetic side of things, because I don't think that is there enough in terms of how does wine really bridge us into other enjoyment factors, and how does it touch on us in certain ways, and maybe have anecdotes from notable wine people from around the world, and I think that could be more soon on the horizon. Is I think editorial audio type stuff where it's just spoken word but on a topic in wine. I would love to explore that a little
content
further.
Man, it's fun to be in this kind of business of creating content.
Yeah, and it's something that I love, so it works out.
And you get some kind of carte blanche here in this beautiful studio of yours.
Right. Well, within certain parameters, and also, and of course, we want to respect the desires as to how Co-op wants to present itself.
Absolutely.
So that's always on my mind.
Yeah.
We've got time. We've got 30 seconds left.
Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure
Yeah.
to reverse the roles here and chat with you. Learn more about you, about your journey, and I can't wait to see what you're up to next.
What would be one of your favorite interviews?
Ezra Starr,
Ezra
225,
Starr.
just released it, the most intellectual stimulating chat I've ever had on the show.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. We talked about everything that people love, that I love, culture, language.
I love the little piece about Miles Davis and the tone of Miles Davis. What can you describe that a little bit?
She was saying that the tone was articulated by a piece of loose skin on his top lip, and that was how what ultimately stylized Miles Davis's tone. Those kinds of tidbits, those are more to come from Show to V, available at your favorite podcast locations.
What? So we're gonna go out to some music.
Cool. Queens of the Stone Age, Songs of the Deaf, a brilliant record. Dave Grohl fills in on drums. It's no resonance to any of the drums. Number three, Songs of the Dead.
Mike, thank you so much for being on the show. This is Another Bottle Down. My name is Mark Rashap, and we talk wine and the wine industry, but it's been a real pleasure to talk about spirits and also the art of podcasting. And we'll keep on doing what we do here, we must. All right, let's go check this out. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for everybody who pledged during the pledge drive and enjoyed.
Well, there we have it. Another episode of Show to V, another episode of Another Bottle Down with Mark Rashap, the host, interviewing the hosts, talking about our experiences in the wine and spirits industry, talking to some of the greatest personalities, people that are in the lab, people that are out there traveling, and it was a nice way to spend a Tuesday afternoon chatting with Mark. You can tune into Mark's show, Another Bottle Down, on KOOP Radio 91.7 here in Austin, Texas, every Tuesday at 1 p.m., and he's done such great work. He's even received an honorary award from the Austin Food and Wine Alliance. If that doesn't show you how much impact Mark's had on this industry and this communication and podcasting as a medium, I'm not sure what will. So thanks everybody for listening to Show to V with Mike G. No matter when you're planning your next radio interview, or if you're thinking, man, I hear there's some good new Netflix series coming out, but I don't know, I just want to watch that Andre the Giant documentary, please keep thinking.